Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force Space. Thanks for joining us for today's event, From Campus to Careers with Concordia Global Affairs. We would like to begin by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands in CGAA, Montreal. And we respect the continued connections with the past, the present, and the future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. Here at Force Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities, examine research questions, projects, conversations happening across the university. And today we're running this event as a live stream both to YouTube and via Zoom. So if you're joining us there and you have comments and you have questions, that's fantastic. Please add those into the chat. We'll do our best to read them out a little bit later. And same for those of you here in the space. If you have any comments or questions later on, just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone over to you so that everybody can hear. Okay, with that, it's very much my pleasure to hand the microphone over to our Undersecretary General of Specialized Agencies with the Concordia University Model United Nations, as well as member of Concordia Global Affairs Association, Abby Montgomery. Great to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and our lovely panel here. So welcome to our CGAA event from Concordia Global Affairs From Campus to Careers. Now, for those who don't know what CGAA is or our many branches within the club, let me introduce it to you. So CGAA is the Concordia Global Affairs Association, and we do have a mission statement, so I'll read it out to you. To spark and nurture interest in international affairs among Concordians in the broader Montreal community. So really our goal is to introduce people to the wonderful world of Model United Nations, as well as the many branches that are connected to it. So we do have CED, the Concordia External Delegation, which is our competitive travel team, which goes all over North America, from Los Angeles to here in Montreal, competing on behalf of Concordia in the wonderful world of Model UN. Then we have ConMun, which is our own conference that we host from March 12th to 15th every year. It's going to be a good one this year, so I strongly recommend it. And then we have CHIP, the Concordia Humanitarian Initiative Project, where we put our words into actions and actually aid the broader Montreal community with our humanitarian work. Now let's get into this lovely conversation and let me introduce our panelists. So we have Ramsha Shaikh, who is our CGA chairwoman. She's a biology major as well, and she really focuses on leadership within both CGAA and MUN. Now, she focuses on very much collaborative and administration coordination and lots of scientific research. So we will be getting into the STEM aspects of her field as well. We have Rebecca D'Souza, who is our CHIP director. So she's in charge of all of the humanitarian work we do. She's both a poli-sci and history major and really works with nonprofits when it comes to working with the community and really working with charitable causes. Then we have Joshua Lewis. He is our CGAA internal director. So he focuses on equity, making sure we're all feeling safe and comfortable, as well as leading with communication, analytical, and organizational skills. He also works in event security, which allows him to create and foster safe, inclusive, and collaborative environments. So let's have a little round of applause for our lovely panelists for being here with us. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Now we're going to start off with our questions with you, Ramsha. So could you tell us a bit more about your role as chairwoman in CGAA and how the skills translate in the fields of STEM?
Yes, thank you so much, Abby, for making it today. Thank you to all the panelists. So CGAA has been a constant source of conversation in my life for the past few years, and I wouldn't have it any other way. My transition into chairwoman started off with CHIP, actually. I joined CHIP 2 years ago, I joined CED 2 years ago, and over the years I've kind of built experience. And a lot of this experience includes a plethora of skills. I think when we talk about Model UN, we focus on debate and diplomacy and public speaking, which is great. But when you do something as specific and concise as Model UN, it teaches you a lot about organization. It teaches you a lot about priority management. And those are skills that I feel like were honed by this activity and were honed by working in organizations like CHIP and like training in CED. And so accumulating these skills over the past few years has kind of helped me build up into transitioning as chairwoman. Obviously, it's a role that you learn a lot on the way. This is my first time being chairwoman, so there's a lot of things that you learn as you go. But I think that when it comes to skills like organization, when it comes to skills like communication, they surpass the boundaries of just one academic field. They work towards STEM, they work towards policymaking, they work towards debate, they work towards political science, NGOs, and that's kind of what CGAA is to me.
Amazing. I love that so much. And if anyone else has anything they'd like to add to any questions, honestly, just feel free to jump in. So Rebecca, how does CGAA help Montreal communities with CHIP as well as our other branches?
Yeah, I mean, CGAA primarily focuses on Model UN. The primary two of our branches, the Concordia External Delegation and Concordia Model UN Conference, is very much about the game of Model UN. It's the competitive aspect of it. And CHIP is flexible in the sense that it is not bound by the rigidity that comes with Model UN. It's not bound by the rules of the game or the circuit. And it allows us to really think about what we talk about in these conferences. It's not just the hypotheticals. It's not just these ideas that we are advocating for. You get to genuinely see that put into action. Every single year, whoever the CHIP director is, chooses a cause that is near and dear to their heart. Last year, Ramsha chose literacy. This year, I chose mental health. And in the past, CHIP directors have chosen focusing on issues like women's rights, transitioning to the career space for young people. So it really does allow us to move outside the rigidity of MUN and to focus on just our communities on the ground here. So.
Could you tell us about any events that have been hosted through CHIP?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think CHIP events are not as rigid as I said. They can be very formal as panels like this, or they can also be wellness events. We've hosted sip and paints, we've hosted thrift shops where we've donated a lot of the clothes and the donations that we get to charities here in Montreal, like the Yellow Door, like Chez Doris, which is just a couple streets down from right where this space is. So it's really nice for us to get out there and to communicate with NGOs that are doing good work here in the community.
It's wonderful. Well, I'm sure Montreal is very grateful for the work CHIP has done over the years. So
and we're grateful for Montreal.
Aren't we all? So Josh, I heard you got promotion recently. Congratulations. Could you tell us a bit about how the skills you've gained in Model UN and through your role as internal director have helped you with your promotion and being a young person in a position of authority?
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me today. I think the skills I've learned, there are two parts of this. So first, there's the internal director part. So as internal director, I have to make sure that everybody in our teams and every single branch of the Concordia Global Affairs Association knows how to behave, how to be treated, and how to tackle issues that can be very difficult to talk about. Because in Model United Nations conferences, we talk about extremely precarious issues, refugee issues, climate issues that affect real people. And there's a way to talk about these things while respecting these things for what they are. Real people are affected by this every day, and my job is to make sure that every single delegate that goes to these conferences that represents the school knows the importance of that. So that has taught me in my role as a security supervisor for events, it's taught me a lot about empathy. When I work with people who might have issues, who might not understand what's going on, they're lost, they might be looking for their seat. Sometimes the smallest problems can seem insurmountable to some people and can help me understand them and help them bring some kind of sense to what's going on. So that's helped me in that. When it comes to Model United Nations and actually competing, what that has taught me is it has taught me leadership. It's taught me how to speak for myself, how to make myself heard, and I think that is something that has definitely helped me. I've spoken this whole time without the mic in my mouth. Hopefully people heard me, but yes, it's taught me to speak up for myself, and that has helped me get my promotion at a young age. I'm 22 years old, and the other security supervisors, I think the other youngest one is 39.
Wow.
And it's helped me make a name for myself in that company, but also be respected by my peers, not because even if they have many more years of experience than me, I could still put my foot down and actually make myself heard. So yeah.
Wow, that's so amazing seeing how MUN and your role has affected so many different fields and careers and how it really does aid in that sense. Back to you, Ramsha. So what skills do you think you've acquired through MUN and CGAA are unique compared to skills another club might provide students?
I think when it comes to Model United Nations, a huge aspect of doing something like MUN is the ability to read the room and to understand people, right? When we talk about competing and when we talk about winning, it really is a game of trying to understand what your chair likes, trying to understand what we call it a dais, what your dais wants to see in you. And so you have to have the ability to be able to pivot, to be able to adapt to these different situations. And something that I feel like MUN has taught me that I haven't necessarily gotten explicitly from a lot of other areas is the ability to take feedback head on. If you've done MUN, it's brutal. You hear things about yourself that other people will not tell you to your face. But that is the point of MUN. It's about learning how to take feedback head on and then adapt it later on into your committee sessions. And STEM is very similar in that sense. STEM is a very straightforward field. It's a very, some might call it a cutthroat field, right? And so you have to have the ability to sit there with your professors and with your academic assistants and researchers and understand what they want and what they want to see and adapt your work accordingly so that you're able to make a more cohesive picture. Because at the end of the day, STEM is just as collaborative as MUN is. And so those are the two skills that I would say are very unique to Model United Nations.
Well, I completely agree. And it really does translate into so many different wonderful things. Now back to you, Rebecca. I feel like a news anchor right now. I'm like, back to you. How has your experience in MUN helped you navigate the corporate world and corporate workspaces?
I think, as Ramsha said very rightfully, Model UN puts you in very chaotic and intense situations, and a lot of times it tests your ability to adapt to those situations. Do you stay calm? Do you panic? Are you afraid? Do you cry? Do you not? And it tests your ability to work under pressure. You're supposed to give a speech. You're also supposed to write down your ideas. You're also supposed to make alliances with your fellow delegates. All the while, you're also supposed to take care of yourself. Make sure that you mentally feel okay. Make sure that you're physically up to take up the challenge of representing your paper, representing your ideas. So all of that really just tests your inner grit as a person. And I think for me, in the corporate world, I found my transition into a corporate workspace easier because of Model UN. What I felt is that in meetings, I was never nervous because I'd represented my ideas before. I knew how to handle myself under pressure. And I think primarily what I always felt is that studying political science and working in a political field are two very different things. It's night and day. Because when you study political science academically, you're looking at things from a very broad bird's eye perspective. But when you work with nonprofits and you work with communities on the ground, you realize that the reality is not just a law that's encoded in a book. It's not just that. It's about families, it's about communities. And I think that bridge between what you study academically is what MUN provided for me. Because I can analyze these policies, I can talk about them day in and day out, but at the end of the day, when I'm in a conference with a bunch of delegates, I also know that I'm speaking to a person. When they represent their countries, when they represent their assignments or their schools, they're also people. And I think helping me form those relationships just really helped me in the workspace to see the human being before you see their role or their assignment.
It's amazing. Now, on the subject of politics, Josh, I hear you've been working politically with your local member of parliament as well. Yeah. Could you tell us a bit more about that journey and how did the CGAA help prepare you for it?
Thank you. I think what Rebecca said is really, it rings true, like seeing people for who they are and the empathy part of it. I think that's definitely helped me in my work with the politician. CGAA has helped me achieve that during the election that happened last year. I helped this politician because of all I've learned in CGAA with speeches and talking and helping people go out to vote. And that has helped me understand really the the core purpose of what a politician does. I got to see what he's doing, who he meets, what people talk to him about. A lot of it is about bringing people who have families that are broken, from immigration, from all these different things. And I got to really see the actual aspect of politics from the office of it, you know? And it really rings true to what Rebecca said. I mean, like you can read textbooks for a long time and have your idea of what the world's gonna look like, but then when you step outside, you just have to deal with the fact that reality is there, and that you're gonna have to make some choices that maybe on the textbook they would say that's nonsensical, it's not rational, but we're not always living in a rational world. And I think my work with that politician, it showed me the other side of politics, where it's really about the common people like you and me, who go to work, who try to make a living, and politicians are there to help those people. No matter how many headlines we see online or whatever, it's really important. Public representation, because of what CGA has helped me achieve with that, seeing that from the other part of it, it's really helped me put in perspective what politics is really about.
It's amazing, truly. So Ramsha, has your involvement in CGAA given you a bit of an academic edge, I would say? Like, do you think it's really aided in your journey in university, in your classes, in really your day-to-day life at school?
I would say 100%. When it comes to my academics specifically, I come from an academic field that is very technical, that is very precise, very accurate, very to the point. And when you talk about something as specific as science, you have to realize that when it comes to working on scientific solutions, that is something that the STEM community does. But when it comes to actually adopting these solutions, putting them into laws, putting them into frameworks, having people even take the smallest things as like a vaccine, per se, right? That is something that the common public needs to be informed about. So a lot of the times there's this gap between a STEM-oriented field and the common public. And that gap is communication. It's very hard at times to communicate a very complex scientific idea to the general public. We saw this during COVID, right? People would not necessarily understand the complexities of something as, in the scientific community, something as simple as a virus, right? And that's not to say that it's on the people or on the community. It's on a basis of miscommunication between the people and between the community. And I think that's where something like Model United Nations comes up, because we have to be able to explain, not even just in science, but when it comes to our social sciences, when it comes to the way we look at things like the banking sector, like the finance sector, we have to be able to take these concepts and explain it to the general public in a digestible manner. And that is where I think MUN has helped me the most. I've presented papers, I've presented scientific papers, and through MUN, I've been able to condense them, comprehend them, and explain them in extremely simple language. So that not only my peers, but someone who is not from a STEM-oriented field, maybe like you, Abby, or Josh, or Rebecca, are able to understand these papers. That's something that we do at conferences as well. I always tend to present a more scientific edge, but through MUN, I'm able to explain these concepts in a more digestible fashion so that the entire committee understands. And I think that's something that I think rings importance for a lot of people in my community.
Oh, that's very true. And you're right on the money by saying I'm not very STEM oriented. That is for sure. Catch me in the liberal arts building whenever. So, Rebecca, let me just find where I'm at. Why is it so important for CGAA to be involved in humanitarian work?
I think the simplest and shortest way is you got to walk the talk. We spend so much time talking about these very large committees. So Model UN is a simulation of the actual United Nations. And we have the same committees and organizations and subsidiary bodies that the United Nations has. So WHO, UNICEF, UNESCO, you name it. And I think just like how we see, one of the common complaints that a lot of people have in geopolitics is, oh, the UN doesn't really do anything. And I think that complaint is the very reason as to why it's important for Model United Nations teams to have some form of humanitarian action or some form of community-based initiatives embedded as they compete and as they carry on this activity. Because we see these gaps in society, we see these gaps in existing organizations. What are we doing to fix that? And I think that's what CHIP has tried to do in the past few years, whether that's serving the Concordia student body here or whether it's serving communities outside. We've collaborated with multiple clubs here, part of the CSU. Most recently, we collaborated with Women in Engineering. We've collaborated with Jamiba. So we really try to bridge those gaps across faculties and to reach student communities that are not just involved with political science, not just involved with international relations, but faculties across Concordia. Because the world isn't just a political problem, it's an everyone problem. And we all need to pitch in to make some sense of the chaos that is our world today.
Well, that's for sure. All right, Josh, is there a moment in particular when you were on the campaign trail that you realized, oh, MUN helped prepare me for this?
I would say, because when we were mobilizing for the campaigns, we went all over Quebec and we went door knocking. And some of the hardest parts of getting people out to vote, especially for the party you want them to vote for, is door knocking. Because people will be as honest as possible with you, especially if they know which political party you're with, and especially if they don't like that political party. And I think it was in Terrebonne, which was a party, a very, very close race, if anybody watches federal elections. And I went door knocking to this woman's house, and she was a staunch, opponent of the party I was supporting. And I had a long discussion with her. I brought in my points. We kind of duked it out, I guess you could say. And I actually managed to convince part of her to be like, you know what? Maybe I should look into things a little more, or maybe I should take in your perspective a little bit more. And I didn't come to it in a way that was, let's say, confrontational or wanting to be absolutely right. I came to it in a way to be empathetic. I listened to her. I tried to understand where she was coming from. Why was she thinking these things? What kind of problems she had in her life? And then I would frame it as in how could the party I'm voting for fix that? And when the party I was supporting had shortcomings, I would acknowledge it. Because sometimes that helps make people understand that I'm not here to win, I'm here to understand, and I'm here to maybe give you a different perspective that you might not have seen. And MUN has definitely worked helped me with that. Going to conferences where you go into, you deliberate in big groups, 20 people sometimes, and everybody has a different, unique idea to tackle an issue. And sometimes people just want to speak over each other and have their ideas be the loudest. But what you see is that the people who succeed in making their ideas pass are those who listened, those who understood others, who said, your idea is good, I have one as well, maybe we could make things work. And that's the diplomacy part of things that has definitely helped me outside of MUN and definitely helped me with that woman.
Wow, that's very impressive. All right, Ramsha. So our team is very much made up of a lot of different people. We have actors, we have filmmakers, lawyers, scientists, future politicians. How important do you find it to build a group of people with so many varying differences and interests and personalities?
I think when it comes to any sort of social activity, diversity is always key. When you are in a space where you're allowing people to make their voices heard, you need to make sure that that space is open to everybody, including people that you have not necessarily interacted with in an academic way. And I think that's one of the most interesting experiences that I get out of MUN. You guys are Concordians. I just commuted here from Loyola, right? So there's a bit of a physical barrier sometimes when it comes to our university and when it comes to people communicating within the different faculties that exist within our university. And when I come to a training, which are usually on Tuesdays, I see people from the theater department, I see people from poli-sci, I see people from engineering. And it's so refreshing to see people from different fields talk about the same problem. And what I find most interesting is the way people approach the same problem. You know, there's certain students that bring a more human aspect to it. There's certain students that bring a more problem-solving aspect to it. And when we talk about real issues, this is how we should deal with them, right? There's no clear-cut answer, unfortunately, to a lot of issues that we go through today and, you know, face on an everyday basis. So we need to learn how to collaborate. And as Shah said, we need to learn how to listen. And MUN does that for you. And the only way MUN can do that for you is if you allow that room to be open to anyone and everyone who's willing to participate in that conversation.
Was there a moment in particular where this sense of collaboration and diversity really struck you?
There was, actually, and it was at one of the conferences I attended at McGill, and I walked into the room, and there was another delegate there who was from another university down in Los Angeles, and this was my first time meeting him. We've been good friends since, but my first time meeting him, and we were just exchanging words. And he was like, "Hey, I'm an econ major. You know, this is I'm in my last year." And I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'm a biology major." And he just stood there for a second, and he was like, "You're a biology major?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's going to be a problem." And I said, "Okay, why is that?" And he said these words to me, and I still carry them with me to this day. He said, "Because you come from a field where the people don't necessarily talk. So if you learn how to talk and if you learn how to communicate, then that's going to be a problem for me, because now I can't sell these ideas by myself." And that's when I was like, oh, this is different. These are the skills it's teaching me, right? I'm learning how to brand myself, and I'm learning how to make whatever I'm doing more appealing to a general audience. And that's when it kind of struck me that, like, this is a very diverse activity. And this is not to say that I'm threatening the economic field, by the way. I think it'll be just fine.
JMSB, you're safe from us.
But it did kind of ring in that there are people from so many different fields partaking in the same activity.
Wow, that's so cool. And don't worry, JMSB, we're not coming for your jobs yet. So, Rebecca, what's a skill from MUN that you found surprisingly useful when it comes to your career, whether it be in corporate or with charities? So something that's kind of shocked you.
I think something that's kind of shocked me is the ability to stay quiet. There are times when you're in Model United Nations and you're encouraged to speak, you're encouraged to make your voice heard, you're encouraged to be the loudest one in the room, to bring your ideas front. But to know when to talk and to know when to listen, I think that gauge is something that a lot of people lack. There's people that are too silent. There's people that don't bring their ideas forward at all. And then there's people who maybe overdo it. That perfect balance is what Model UN brings into my life. Like a lot of people, I joined this club because I couldn't hold a conversation to save my life. I couldn't give a speech, and I struggled with it. And I think Model UN for me was some radical form of exposure therapy where I was forced to do all the things that used to scare me. And I think what I learned from that is when you're in a corporate setting, to know the right moment to bring your idea forward, to know which idea to bring forward, and to know how to bring it forward. Because the tone with which you speak, the words that you use, the impact that they make, it's all up within your choice. And making that choice, knowing when to make that choice, that is something that Model UN teaches you. Because you can bring an idea to your fellow delegates a little too early, and it might not succeed. But you bring it at the right time, and you bring it at the very moment that your dais or your chair wants to see that from you, and it can take your performance from a 0 to 100. And I think that's primarily what Model UN brings to my life, is to gauge the room and to gauge my own role in any space, be it in corporate, be it when I'm in the club, when I'm learning when I'm teaching other delegates on Model UN strategy, or whether I'm listening to other delegates' experience.
That's so great. So, Josh, what's the most important aspect of your work as internal and equity? What do you think makes it such an integral part of the team?
Wow.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I think culture. Now, let me unpack that a little bit.
We want you to.
Like we talked about earlier, Model United Nations can be a place where a lot of people have different ideas and that they want to bring them forward. And like I said earlier, there's a way to bring that forward. And if we want to build a culture of respect, of dignity, of actually upholding the values that the United Nations has and upholds around the world, we need to have an actual good team culture. And I think the most important things that I'm doing and I'm going to be doing, whether it be for CGAA as a whole or for Conman as Director of Equity, is teaching delegates where to draw the line on certain things. What is acceptable speech? How do we tackle difficult conversations? Is it appropriate to use certain words about certain countries? I mean, a perfect example of that is the term third world. I mean, on the circuit, you hear so many different people sometimes using that word to describe other countries. It's a demeaning word because it ranks countries as tiers, as if one is better than another, which completely negates the context of that country's history and where it's at. So there are better ways to put things. There are developing countries, for example, is a better term because it allows that full context. And that's just one example, but I can give you so many more that the words we use, and like Rebecca said, words matter, they have power, need to be used in a way that's respectful, especially because we're talking about real issues that affect real people.
So true. Now we're going to be moving on to a section of our wonderful talk where everyone is able to answer. So I'll ask a question and just feel free to pipe in. It's a conversation. So how do you believe aspects that we've learned, such as branding in training, can play into your careers?
I'll start off. So for those of you that are following along, whether it's on YouTube Live or on Zoom, branding is an aspect of Model United Nations that involves you as an individual delegate are supposed to use, maybe, for example, if you are the delegation of Canada. How do you make yourself memorable in a committee where there's 50 to 100 delegates and there's one person that is supposed to evaluate your performance? You want to make yourself memorable, whether that's through your speeches, your ideas, and primarily, there's also something that you use called branding. Now, whether that's you go up to a speech and you say something, delegates in Canada, we are known for maple syrup. Maple syrup automatically becomes the thing that you are associated with in committee. Now, this is just a very rudimentary example, but branding is something, at the end of the day, it's what makes you memorable. And being able to essentially market yourself, market your skills, market the things that make you unique is a skill that you need to learn for your career. And that is something that I learned the hard way. When I would give interviews, I didn't know what aspects of my skills and my personality would be useful for an organization. And a lot of times I've lost out on opportunities because I didn't know how to present myself. Branding is something that is useful because it allows you to highlight the things that make you a strong candidate in a sea of 1 million people that are eyeing for the same position or the same job that you want. And I think that's ideally what branding informs us, is that to have faith in yourself and to have faith in your skills and to know what to highlight so that it fits, say, a job description or a role.
I mean, it's so true. I mean, when I first started at the job that I'm at right now, I started 3 years ago, and I was just starting in security. I just got my permit, everything, and last summer, when we were working on so many different festivals, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I don't need to wait for them to come to me for the promotion. Let me actually market myself. And that's something I would have never said if not for the fact that I've had to market myself at conferences and I've learned from that experience. So then when I would go to my boss and I told him, you know, this is why you should consider me for this, it came out of me talking about what I've done for the company, because mind you, some people have been there for way longer than I have. He's making an investment in me. You know, I'm 22, I'm young. Young people don't have a good reputation with older folk. And, you know, he might be taking a risk. And I have to make him understand, you know, that he wouldn't be taking that kind of risk with me because I'm a serious person, because I've done this and that, and I've been working in these festivals very, very diligently, and I believe I'd be a good fit for the job. And then just by me telling him this, it was kind of a no-brainer. He just said, you know what? It just makes sense. Yeah, you're young. Yeah, you're that. But you've shown to me with your work, with what you've done, and what you're telling me right now, that I would be making a good investment in you, and I'll do it. And it's the fact that I found the good words to tell him because of what I've done in conferences. It's helped me achieve where I'm at right now. And I really think that, without branding, without knowing how to make myself memorable and how to make it so that if I'm not chosen for this, they're the ones making a mistake, that's a big part of why branding is so important and why it has helped me.
Wow, I mean, I still remember your scrimmage when you were France. That was some grade A branding. I remember, the Baguette Initiative or something of the sort. It was an example for a very long time of good branding. So my question for all of you is, how does MUN prepare the next generation of leaders? It's a big question.
Oof, okay, the next generation of leaders. I think what a lot of people don't necessarily grasp when it comes to being a leader is that you don't have to be of a specific degree or of a specific background to become a leader, right? You can lead in your own way, and that is what MUN teaches you. You don't have to be fit into a specific mold to become a leader. The way I lead is very different from the way Josh leads, and that's very different from the way Rebecca leads. Perhaps that's very different from the way Abby leads. And that is what's important for us to recognize when we talk about leadership, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It depends on the context of the field that you're going into, the context of the people that you're going to work with, the context of the socioeconomic circumstances surrounding that very circumstance that you've been placed in. So that, I think, is something that I would like to lay as a foundation. Now, where does MUN come into all of this? We've talked about reading the room before. We've talked about understanding the importance of when to speak and when to listen. And those, I feel like, are two very good qualities of leaders. You must be able to speak at the right time, but also learn when to not speak, and when to give others the mic, and when to give others the ability to, you know, put out their work. And that requires a lot of diplomacy. That requires a lot of dialogue. And that is where MUN comes in. MUN doesn't teach you how to be a leader. It teaches you how to refine the skills that you would need to fit into your type of leadership. It teaches you how to understand the way other people work. It teaches you how to understand how social hierarchies and social connections work. Because regardless of what leadership field you want to go into, you are going to be faced with certain social circumstances, be it STEM, be it political science, be it the social sciences. We work with people at the end of the day, and people are different from each other, right? Even our DNA, our fingerprints, they're all unique. And so the way people interact, the way people deal with circumstances is extremely different. And that's what MUN teaches you. It teaches you how to analyze the way people behave and how to best help them and how to best help them succeed in a specific role.
Yeah, very well said.
I think if I could take an example like of a young leader right now, I think of like in the political world, Zoran Mamdani, right? If you look at his campaign from an objective perspective, it's brilliant. He knows who his audience is. He knows that his speeches are full of charisma and understanding, but also he's a listener. I mean, I think he spent 24 hours sitting down, talking to a New Yorker one by one, listening to their issues and actually understanding it, and then he turns that into policy. And to me, charisma, sometimes we think that's something that is innate. You're either born with it or you just won't have it. And what MUN has taught me is that that's not true. You can learn charisma. You can learn how to reach people, how to make people listen to you. And you can become a leader. Even if you think, if you're watching this, you think, I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to make my ideas. I stutter a lot. I think I can speak for all of us when I said we didn't start by being good. We failed and we worked so hard and we were like, oh, our speeches aren't good. Oh, we need to work on this, we need to work on that. But what we did was we didn't give up. We didn't think that our charisma was innate and that we just couldn't do it. We kept going and it translated in us succeeding. It translated in us actually doing something with ourselves and being charismatic. And to me, that's what a good leader has charisma, a leader that listens to people and that can make himself understood, but that doesn't happen in a day. That happens with work, and I believe that MUN is one of the best places to practice those soft skills that can make you into a good leader.
So true.
I think it also just needs to be said that the way Model UN shapes leaders is it makes the playing field seem attainable. I think especially now as young people, politics seems like a Pandora's box that you don't want to open. You don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's a scary place. The political spectrum is divided. It's ostracizing. It's alienating. And I think more and more young people feel like they're not being heard. They feel like they don't have a stake in the system. They feel like they can't change their current realities. And so they feel at a loss. And I think what Model UN does is it opens a door for young people, for university students, for high school students, CEGEP students, to get a taste of what it's like to make policy. Get a taste of what it's like to see people and speak to people from different parts of the world. I think just speaking about our team in general, we've got people from all over the world, people who've moved halfway across the world to be here in Montreal. We've got people from every corner of the political spectrum, every corner of this planet, and we come together every single week at every single conference and we represent one team, one school. And I think that's the beauty of this team, is that no matter where you come from, no matter what you do, no matter what field you're in, there is a space for you at this table. And I think that's what Model UN opens up for young people, is that you have a space, you have a voice. It's up to you whether or not you want to use it.
It really is just such a beautiful uniting force, isn't it? So how have your respective careers, whether it be in your fields or in academia, affected your time in MUN, whether it be at conferences or trainings, and vice versa?
Okay, so when it comes to academics and when it comes to something like research is a very open-ended field. And a lot of the times there's two parts to it. There's the part where you actually do the research, which requires a lot of technicalities, which requires a lot of having an expertise in the field that you are doing your research in. But the other part of it is to market your research. And that's where things like branding, that's where things like networking really come in. A lot of people don't realize this, but science is about networking. You could have the best ideas. You could have ideas that are perhaps better than a lot of physicists in the world right now, right? But if you don't know how to communicate them to the broader public, it's not going to get anywhere. And that's something that I think I didn't realize the importance of it until I joined MUN. Something I started doing after joining MUN was just asking a lot of questions. I would participate in these research projects, and a lot of the times when you're in a room with people that have won these scientific grants and that are doing projects with NASA, that are doing projects with the Canadian space agencies, that are making things that are going up into things like space and clinical research, you kind of freeze, you know? There's that sense of, oh, what if I say the wrong thing, especially to a superior, right? What if my professor thinks that I'm dumb, right? It's a very genuine concern for a lot of people, and I was the same way. And once I started doing MUN, and I started kind of putting myself out of my comfort zone, I became more comfortable with asking questions and more comfortable with being wrong, right? I am a student at the end of the day. And we all make mistakes. And that's my favorite part about MUN, is that I'll go into a conference or a scrimmage and I'll make mistakes, and I'll make a lot of them, right? But that's my place to learn. And then when I step into an academic field and when I step into a scientific community, I have the confidence to go up there and ask a question. And even if in science we say no question is a bad question, but even if it is a bad question, I know for a fact that I can carry myself with that grace and that confidence. So I think that's definitely something that's helped me quite a bit.
I think in terms of my career, I stumbled into it accidentally, just like I stumbled into MUN accidentally. Happy accidents. When I started, so I currently work for a nonprofit here in Montreal, and what CHIP did for me is that it set me up very well to transition into this new organization. With CHIP, we primarily work with existing nonprofits. And so I had a very surface level knowledge of how our partners worked. We would partner with them for, say, a single event, and our interaction would be a few emails and maybe just a line or two about what your partner organization does. But when I started working for the current nonprofit that I work with now, it was more of me being on the other side of the conversation and being the nonprofit person, being the person that's partnering with other organizations, raising awareness for events, and particularly working in an Indigenous context. For me, I didn't grow up here in Canada. I didn't grow up with a deep-rooted knowledge of what post-colonial Indigenous experience is like here in Canada. And for me to understand what that's like and to work in this space and to find my own role within this organization, I found it easier because I had experience with Model UN, because I had experience having difficult conversations, because I had experience researching for Model UN, because I had experience working with CHIP. And so I think what Model UN really is, it's not the end all be all, but it's a stepping stone and it can take you places. And I've seen so many of our alumni, people that taught me Model UN skills, go on to do incredible things, work for companies like Amazon, work in parliament, work for major political parties, go to like big Ivy League law schools. And I think MUN is what got them there. And I think that's why this club is so important to the people that are here. There are people who have been involved in this club for like 6 years. And the thing that keeps them coming back is that there's real reward for your involvement with this club.
I think for my career, since it's not really something you would think about, like MUN helping, right? I mean, when you think of a security guard, you think of someone who doesn't smile, who's very like a little stuck up, you might say, and like doesn't, just no niceties, no smiling, nothing. And that's how I thought about it before I joined security. And what I learned is that the best way to handle situations, because we handle conflict a lot, is kind of how you would handle a conference. If I can take an example, sometimes you deal with people who are intoxicated at events, which happens a lot. And they get aggressive sometimes. And a lot of that we see in law enforcement is that we lost this ability to de-escalate. We have lost that ability. And diplomacy is kind of a form of de-escalation. It's a form of compromise and understanding the other party, which all ties back into empathy. And when I work with people who are aggressive, sometimes all I had to do is smile and talk to them, and it would diffuse the entire situation right then and there. No fighting, no nothing, just conversation. And that's all it took. But MUN taught me that. It taught me how to do conflict resolution. It taught me that when I see a situation and I see two people completely angry, I don't automatically think, okay, let me match that energy. No, let me be the calm in the storm. Let me try to level things out. Let me understand where those people are coming from, and then try to find a reasonable solution. And I think that's what MUN is about. You have so many different, if you do find yourself joining the team and going on conferences to Harvard, to all these different competitive conferences, you have to deal with so many different personalities. So many. And it teaches you a lot about the world, but it teaches you a lot about yourself. And where are your tipping points? What makes you angry? What makes you sad? What makes you more understanding of people? What are your biases? And that has made me understand, and that has helped me because I deal with so many different people. Some shows are rock, some shows are rap, some are comedy, others are hockey games. You have different people going to different places, and you meet so many different people, and you have to act differently with all these different people because they have different contexts, different lives, etc. And MUN is the exact same thing. And I think anyone with that skill of conflict resolution, being the calm one in a tense situation, that can be helpful in any field, any field.
That's so wonderful. Now, you mentioned the circuit and how it can be quite competitive. What do you hope the future of the North American circuit, as well as Model UN as a whole, looks like?
So the circuit is something, the Collegiate circuit is something that changes every year. Sometimes it changes on a monthly basis. And I think that the circuit a lot of the times reflects the situations that we go through in North America and in the world in general. We talk about MUN being an activity where you represent a country and you deal with a specific assignment, but it's also important to keep in mind that we're just people. And a lot of the times when people speak about political situations, especially political situations in a world that is so interconnected, they do tend to reflect their attitude towards such situations in the way that they deal, right? We're all human at the end of the day. And sometimes you step into committee and if you're a Middle Eastern person and you have a Middle Eastern background and the committee deals with the same topic, there is a certain level of bleeding in terms of the solutions that you present and what you want as a person to happen in said scenario. But I think one of the most beautiful aspects of MUN is that regardless of what scenarios are going on, there's an air of cooperation. There's an air of being like, hey, I have a completely different idea than what you do. Let's sit down over lunch and talk about it, right? Some of the most fruitful conversations I've had in MUN aren't necessarily even in committee. It's those dinners and those lunches that you have in the middle of committee sessions where someone from a completely different part of the world will come up to you and go, yeah, so I shadowed under this prime minister, or I worked for this guy, right? And you're like, oh, damn, that's really cool. Like, I had no idea that you did something like this. And I think if there's any expectation I have from the circuit, it's to continue that trend of cooperation, because we're always going to have differences as people, and we're always going to have conflicting ideas. But as long as we're able to sit down and talk about it over hot pot or over an iced matcha, whatever, that's what matters. And that's the spirit of MUN, really. It's to be able to be diplomatic, and is the ability to sit down and go, hey, these are our problems. Let's sit down and workshop it together.
I think the future of the circuit is bright. I see it every week when I train delegates every Tuesday. And I see people with so much potential. with fire in their hearts that really, really want to impact the world in a positive way. And to me, it's what makes this a rewarding experience is to see when these delegates light up, when they finally get how to brand right, when they finally get how to give an impactful speech, when they represent their papers and they put into action the skills that we teach them. That to me reassures me that the circuit is going to keep going as it is, and it's going to get even better. And it makes me also think of circuits that are beyond North America. I, for one, started participating in Model UN in the Middle East, where I grew up. And the standards for what makes a good delegate, the standards of how the rules of procedure are run are very different. And likewise, circuits around the world are constantly changing, just as North America. And I think the more young people take part in these activities, like Model UN, like Moot Court, the more young people take initiative, the more we can stay assured that our world is a safe place, and it always will be.
My hope is that it continues. I mean, what I've learned from MUN is that there's so many different people and so many different ideas, and that can only be bettered if there's more people with even more differences of ideas. I think it allows you to network with people who you might have never thought you would network with. I mean, you meet so many different people. We travel, we go to Toronto, we go to Boston, we go to Cornell, we go to so many different schools, and you meet so many different people with so many different backgrounds and who have their own connections. And then these will be your peers one day. I mean, if you are in the field of international relations, you're probably going to work with these people because they care about those things as well. There are other people who are in engineering. You might work with these people as well. In STEM or in nonprofits, you will have to work with these people. They'll be your peers. And it's always good to have a good network with yourself, with you, knowing a lot of people in different places that gets you places. I mean, it always does. And I really think the circuit is good at that. And I really hope that it keeps growing, that more people join, and I really think it'll make the future bright.
Yeah. And it really is just such a wonderful opportunity to meet so many people from all over. I know when I was in North Carolina, I found it so fascinating to see what university life was like in a different country, and I feel I grew so much from it. And on the topic of growth, university is a time when we're meant to discover new aspects of ourselves. How has MUN and the team helped you grow personally? Another big question.
I think Model UN has completely changed the person that I am. I'm not the same person that I was like 3 years ago before I joined this team. Model UN has challenged me in ways that I don't think any other activity has ever challenged me. It's put me in situations where I've had to make hard decisions. It's put me in situations where I've had to draw hard lines between my personal relationships and friendships with people, as well as, okay, this is the club, this is what we're working towards. So really just learning how to compartmentalize and prioritize what your goals are. And I'm sure Josh and Ramsha will agree with me when I say this, because as young people in positions of authority, in executive positions, your peers are the people that you work with. They're also your friends. They're also people that you go get a coffee with. They're also the people that you vent to. But when push comes to shove, you also have a responsibility towards your position, the position that your peers and your friends have entrusted to you. So I think navigating that as a young person and that skill is what Model UN taught me. That being said, some of the best friends in my life that I have now have been through this club. Aww. No matter how much I complain about the workload or the time or my schedule, I will still come running back to Model UN every single week. And I think my fellow panelists will agree when I say that.
Growth. Okay. On the topic of growth, I think it's growth is it's so funny because it's almost like time, right? Like when you're doing something right now, it's like you don't think about it. But 5 minutes after this conversation, I'm gonna be like, oh, I just had a panel with all of these wonderful people. And I think growth is the same way. When you're undergoing the process of growth, it's very hard for you to figure out what exactly is going on with you. And I think that's how MUN has helped me. I'm a very type A person. I have a calendar list and a notes app and a notes list for everything. And MUN has kind of been my Google Calendar for my behavior, right? I'm able to sit back and retrospect in terms of, okay, I went to this conference last week. This is what I did. This is how things worked. And this is how I can improve from it. And that's how I like to look at MUN. It's a personal journal of my own, where I'm able to have these experiences, note them down, and then post-conference look back at them and go, this is what I said. Maybe I can frame this a better way. Maybe I could have had this conversation at a different time. And so for me personally, that's how MUN has impacted my growth. It allows me to keep track of how I'm growing. It allows me to keep myself in a lot of ways in check, right? Even when we talk about CGAA, this is it's a very professional student field, right? So we're not necessarily in the real world in terms of jobs, but at the same time, we take up responsibilities where people rely on us, where people look up to us for advice and for help, and where things need to get done in a certain time in a certain place. So MUN and CGAA for me is a lot like a simulation of the real world. And I'm able to, after a conference and after a meeting, sit back and go, okay, I did this was good, this was not so great, and moving forward, I'm gonna revise myself in certain ways. And so I think for me, that's MUN and growth synchronized.
I love the gentle passing of the microphone.
Man, I think the biggest part of growth for me is I would have never, if you asked me like 5 years ago, if I would be doing something like this or going to a conference and speaking in front of 40 people, I would have called you crazy. I mean, I did not believe in myself. I did not believe that I could express my ideas in a digestible manner. I didn't think I had what it took. I thought charisma was innate. I thought I just had to be him or something. I don't know. And it has helped me realize that it always comes from within. If you want to be someone, if you want to say something, you have just as much right as to say it as the other person. You might think you overthink and you're like, oh my God, I can't say anything. I mean, at my job, I have to give briefings every shift where I have to speak to people about what the expectations are of their work for that given day, what's gonna happen and everything. And when you do speeches, I mean, one of the biggest things that we learn is that people lose attention quickly. I mean, so fast. I mean, in an age where you scroll so much, like 30-second videos, people lose the attention. And you need to find a way to grasp it, to actually have a hold so that they listen to you. And it's helped me in that way. When I give briefings, I always try to add in a little joke or try to, talk a little bit more or make it in point form so that it's digestible and people can remember and they can do their jobs efficiently. Because I always tell the people I work with that I'm not there to preside over them, I'm there to make their lives easier. And a way to make their lives easier or their work life easier is to make the information I give them digestible. And I would have never, ever thought I would be able to do that all the time, every single shift. And it's helped me believe in what I'm saying, believe that what I'm saying actually matters, because so many people think that their ideas don't matter, that they shouldn't say it, that people won't listen, and it's wrong. And if you just find the courage within yourself to speak up and to say what you feel and to say what matters to you, you could inspire someone else to say what matters to them. And diversity of ideas is the greatest strength of any society. And I think that helps it, and that helps me. So.
Wow. So my next question is really, why did you join MUN? I know for me, I was very influenced by a certain episode of Parks and Recreation. So why did you join the team?
I think I mentioned this before, but the way I joined Model UN was pure accident. One of my very good friends had sent me our high school's Model UN poster, and her exact words to me were, "You talk a lot, I think you should do this." And so I stumbled into it accidentally, and when I moved here for university to Concordia, I heard that Concordia had a good Model UN team, and so it felt, for me at least, like a very natural progression. It's sort of like you're a football star in high school, and then you move to college, and you think, yeah, I'm gonna be quarterback. You won't, but you'll try anyways, and that was kind of how I stumbled into CED. And yeah, so I think it's my biggest hurdle, I think, with joining CED is the change in circuit. The way I did Model UN back home is very different. It was a little more aggressive, a little more combative. So learning how to tone that down, learning how to cater to the circuit, learning how to adapt, learning how to pivot, learning how to market yourself. And I think I've done that to a pretty successful degree because now I tell other people how to do it. So
that is a good sign.
I find that those who can't do teach, but in this case, we also do slightly.
So I started off with MUN 6 to 8 years ago, which now that I say it, I'm like, damn, that's a long time. But I, by nature, was, and to some extent still am, a very introverted person. And when I was a kid, I had a lot of issues when it came to my confidence and when it came to my public speaking. I was really bad, guys. Like, I was really bad. I still remember there was this one time when I was a kid where I wanted a coffee and I really wanted to get myself a cup of coffee, and I didn't have it in me to go and make an order by myself. I couldn't do it. And as like an 11, 12-year-old, that was my realization of like, damn, like this is an actual issue that I am going to have a lot of problems with. And then I decided that I want to get into the medical field. And I had to come to the realization that I'm going to have to talk to strangers every single day for the rest of my life if this is the career I want to pursue. And so I needed to look at different ways for me to hone my public speaking skills. Another thing about me, I love to argue. I'm a very argumentative person. My mom and dad can attest to this. And I also started off in the Middle Eastern circuit. And back there, the debate aspect of it is very... is much higher, I would say, in degree compared to the diplomacy aspect of it. So when I was in high school, a few of my friends were like, oh, we're gonna go to this conference and it's gonna be a lot of fun, and we had school uniforms back then. So we were like, oh, you don't get to wear your uniform, you can wear whatever you want to. And I was
Big
like,
priority.
oh my God, yeah, like, let's do it. And then I went to the conference and I was the only one there out of all my friends. I was like, oh, damn, it's just me. But it was a great experience. That was the first time I did MUN, and I enjoyed it so much to the point where I'm still doing it. That's how I got into it.
Well, there you go.
For me, I first heard about MUN in CGEP. I joined it for a little bit. I didn't really take it that seriously. I wasn't really into it because I was more into football, which was a sport that I was playing at the time. And coming into my first semester here at Concordia, there was a team member from MUN who came to our class and did a classroom presentation. And they were like, come, you're gonna learn how to speak, how to voice your opinions, and you're gonna travel. And I thought, you know what, why not? Let me do it, And I joined, and I remember the tryout, just so many different people, and then they all had their ideas and everything, and I had to go up to do my speech, and I was like, what do I say? Like, how do I prepare for this? Like, what am I doing? And then I did it, and I got some feedback, and they were saying, like, you're good, you can do this, you're actually doing this. And I was like, you know what? This is not half bad. I can actually speak in front of people. I started a little bit. I was super conscious about that and thought about it for like weeks on end afterwards. But it still worked. And now I don't mind if I stutter or if I don't find the words, because I don't take myself too seriously anymore. And I joined MUN, and I never thought I would get to this point where I would talk about it here on a panel, but it was kind of by accident, I guess you could say. Like if that person didn't come and made a speech in front of the whole class, and if I wasn't impressed by it and wanted to do the same thing, I probably wouldn't be here. And a little bit of luck. Yeah,
it's funny how the little things just start to roll on over, and now suddenly you're here in an exec position nonetheless. Yeah. So we often say that CED is a family. And you mentioned earlier how you've met some of your best friends through the team. Why is it so important that we have this social aspect to it and we have this familial aspect?
Well, I think for starters, sitting in a car with someone for 6 to 8 hours traveling to a conference, you will become family by the end of that. But I think for any organization, it's, again, we've said this time and time again, the human being is what's important. And you cannot have team cohesion, you cannot have a sense of camaraderie without nurturing emotion and without nurturing relationships between people. And you can't have that if you don't have respect. I think Model UN is a very small world. You'll go to a couple of conferences and you'll recognize everyone. And your team in itself is also composed of people from very different backgrounds, very different fields, as we've talked about today. So it's important to have something to come back to have something to fall back on. You can be in a conference and something may not go your way, and you may feel dejected, and you may you may not have confidence in yourself. What happens then? Do you give up? No. Because you have a team that knows you, that knows your skills, that knows your caliber, a team that is rooting for you even when you're not rooting for yourself. And I think we build that through the socials. We build that even in the 5 minutes before training when everyone's talking about their classes or their days or their experiences. We build that when we chair at our own conference at ConMun.
Yay, ConMun.
when we're organizing things, when we're delegating, when we're moving around rooms. And I think that just doesn't build skill, it doesn't build professional skills, but it builds your character. It builds who you are as a person. And I think that's what it is for me, is those relationships with people. I cherish them and I will continue to.
Aww.
Yeah, this is one of the first phrases I heard when I joined the club. It's like, we're a family, we're a unit. And I was like, what does that mean? But it's very different being I'm sure all of you can attest to this. Being a university student in general, it's a very different experience. And you're at a stage in your life where you're learning a lot about yourself and you're having all these new experiences. And with an activity like MUN, we talk about it being very diverse, and we talk about the people there having different skill sets and having different backgrounds. But there's always one uniting force when it comes to MUN. A lot of the times that is the urge to win, the competitiveness. But when you're in a team and when you've traveled and when you've shared hotels or motels or different types of living accommodations, it's bonding. It's a lot of the times it's trauma bonding. I've won a lot with this team. I've also lost a lot with this team, and it's moments like that when you realize that this group of people is not going to be with me just for the wins, but also for the losses. I think Rebecca said it very well. It's the way we operate in this team is a win for one is a win for all, right? And I think that's a very important aspect to have in any team setting, in any sort of social team. And you also learn so much about yourself, and you put yourself in such a vulnerable position when you go and you give a speech for the first time, or when you're there having your first feedback session and someone tells you that maybe this isn't, the way you speak isn't the best, Yeah. You put yourself in very vulnerable situations. And then you turn around and the Dell behind you is going to get the exact same feedback. And so it's like, okay, we're being vulnerable, but we're being vulnerable together. You know, this is an experience, this is exposure that we're having together. And I think that creates a bond that you wouldn't necessarily find in a lot of different settings. And that's part of the fabric that ties us together and makes us a family.
So sweet.
I think the best way I can encapsulate this is with a story. So last year, I was in Toronto for the North American Model United Nations conference at the University of Toronto. And at the same time, we had another delegation that went to Harvard for HNMOD. And Harvard is the #1 conference in the world, or at least in North America. And we were at a Chinese restaurant. You know, the conference was over, and they were getting their awards at the same time while we were eating. And we were just glued on our phones for the group chat, seeing if they were gonna update us if they got an award. And I remember, like, when we saw that they won something at like the most competitive conference we know, we just started yelling, hugging, we were so happy because another person won in another country, in another school, so far away. We were so happy. And I remember it vividly. I mean, everybody was looking at us weird, like, what are these kids doing over there? We're trying to eat our food. And at that moment, I was like, wow, like, this is so awesome. You know, I've been in team settings before. You know, I played football. And when you play football, it's kind of like war, where you're in the trenches with your brothers, you know? And you just play and you try to win. But even when you lose, you know, you better each other. And it's the same thing where you root for each other. Even if I didn't win something, just the fact that the delegate from the same delegation of me, we went to the same school, we work together at trainings, we do our speeches, we go to scrimmages together, and then they win something. It's kind of like a collective win where everybody had their part, because winning a committee is difficult. It demands endurance, it demands resilience, it demands a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot of stress, but it's also so rewarding because you get something at the end of it, and let alone it's the highest honor, best delegate. And yeah, with the gavel. And doing that, you can't do that alone. You do it with everybody else on the team. And when you win, it's amazing. I mean, you feel on top of the world. When you lose, it's sad, but your team, they're there for you, and they tell you, you'll get them next time. It doesn't matter, it's okay. And that's why the familial aspect, the friendship aspect of it is super important to me, and yeah.
And of these familial moments, or maybe moments at conferences, what would you say has been your favorite memory that you've made so far?
Oh boy.
I hope there's a lot of good ones to choose from.
There's a lot of good ones. It's too difficult to choose. But I think one of my favorite memories was the last conference that we went to last year, NYU. Although the result was not what we were expecting, there was still this sense of utter joy because it was one of our delegates' final conference and she won a gavel. And even though the rest of us maybe didn't get the outcome that we wanted, we were still so happy for her. And to be in a city as electrifying as New York, with people that have put so much effort into the past weekend and have worked so hard, and to go home together, I think that was just beautiful. And I think anyone that was on that NYU trip will attest to this when I say, we may not have won, but we definitely won something. And it may not have been actual awards, it was something bigger and better.
No memories, guys?
I was trying to think about one while you were talking, and wow. I think a good memory, we'll go back to Toronto, I guess, last year. We won a lot of gavels that day. And it was just amazing. I mean, every time someone went up to get their award, we were just yelling, CED, CED. And then just all the other delegations from all the other schools were like, oh my God, this is a sweep. Like, what's going on? And it was just so electrifying. We were so happy because we worked so hard. like so hard. It's so much preparation, so much work. I mean, it's before a conference. I mean, we have a conference coming up next week in McGill, and it's just studying and preparing and trying to find the right words for our speeches. And it's kind of like another class, honestly. I'm kind of, it should be credited probably, but well, that would be something about another day. But it was just, it's so electrifying. I mean, winning is amazing, you know, and doing it with people that you've worked with and that it's just amazing. And yeah, that's why it was such a good memory, because it was just so fun. Yeah, it was just so fun.
Sorry, it took me some time to think about it, but there's so many. It's very hard to pick one. But if I did have to go for one, it would be 2 years ago. We did New York, NYU, and it wasn't the conference. It was after the conference, where we were all in the hotel room, and we weren't even talking about MUN. We were just talking, right? And I think I see like a deja vu at the end of every committee session when it comes to this. But for me, it's always the delegation dinners, right? Every Saturday after a conference ends, we go for dinners and we kind of de-stress and have that moment. And those are what matter to me, right? The little like talks that you have right after a conference, the delegation dinners that you have, the toasts that you have. Those are memories that I carry with me, because it's a shared experience, you know, and it's like it's a testament that whatever happens at the awards or whatever happens in terms of, you know, your performance, we're still a team. We're still a team at the end of the day, and I think that is always like, out of all of those, I can't pick a specific one, but it's got to be every single one of those moments.
If I may share one of my favorite memories as well. It was on the way back from North Carolina, my very first conference, and it was over a 16-hour drive. We're talking 2 days, 6 of us in the car, and we somehow stopped in every single state to take a picture of us with like doing the initials of the state, and we stopped in the sketchiest gas station in Washington, D.C. that I've ever seen, and we tried so hard to convince Jacob to let us go drive by the Lincoln Memorial, but didn't happen. But either way, very fun, and it really showcased how the team really is a family, and it really is the memories that you're gonna remember for the rest of your life. Now, is there a proudest moment that you have during a conference, during a committee, a speech, a resolution paper, a directive that really sticks out for you?
It was actually my first speech, my first ever committee with the team. It was at McMahon. I was in the UNHCR committee. I was representing the country of Burundi. And my branding was music. So I wanted to make music-themed speeches so that it could be memorable. And I remember we were talking about indigenous issues in Africa, how they didn't have a voice in international organizations, or enough of a voice. And I made this analogy that the indigenous peoples of Africa were kind of like a part of an orchestra that we haven't let play their music yet. And people felt really hit by my words, and I did too, and I felt like so proud of saying that, because it's true, objectively. And it just showed how like versatility in words, how words can be impactful and meaningful. And I felt really proud of that. That I managed to do it like that. And I didn't stutter, so it was good, you know? So yeah.
I think for me it was McMahon last year, where I was the delegate of Japan, and the topic was it was the World Food Program. So it was about making food more accessible in areas that don't necessarily have agricultural farmland. And when I made my solutions, I made all of my clauses, all of my solutions, not necessarily based off of Japan, but I based them off of a research I was doing. And that research was basically where we take organisms like little tiny organisms, and we put them in areas that have been considered infertile. So an example of this is if you go up to Alberta, there's a lot of refineries. There's a lot of different places where these are agricultural lands, but because of the fact that these are used as either oil refineries or any other energy refinery, the land around them has become completely inarable. You can't grow soil, you can't grow plants, and the people suffer as a consequence, because it's not that there isn't any land, it's just the land cannot be used. And so a project that we did was to introduce microorganisms that can revive this soil and that can revive this land. And I was doing it synonymous to McMunn. And so I put that as one of the clauses into our prep. And when we got feedback, because we get feedback from our chair, he glanced over this in a minute, right? And he just said, and I really love your solution. And I've never heard anyone say it before. And I didn't tell him any of this, but in my head, I was like, you know what, hell yeah. Like, this is, that was when I actually realized that like MUN and whatever I'm doing in my real life matters, right? Like, this is a solution that we've been working on as a team for so long. And the fact that I was able to bring it to the general public and that people were able to realize that like, this is an actual solution to an actual problem that people are actually facing right now. That was, yeah, I was very content that day.
I mean, I think this sense of contentment didn't come at the moment, but it came, I would say, months after it actually happened, probably ConMun last year. My committee was very interesting because we were dealing with urban water scarcity, and this was a topic that the former USG and I had talked about extensively because we come from spaces where urban water systems are pressured quite a bit. And so months after the conference was over, everything was done, I got a message from one of our team members saying, hey, you've been recognized as an outstanding chair by the North American Circuit. And I thought that that was the most insane thing to ever happen to anybody on this planet, because I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I didn't do anything differently as to the millions of times that I've chaired committees. I just did what I usually do. But the fact that someone out there and my team recognized something in me, saw something in me that I didn't see, that to me was a moment of pride, not in myself, but in my team. The fact that this team sees something in its people. And I see it every day. I think every term when we hire new execs, every year when we get a new chair, when we get a new president, a new vice president, new board members, in a couple months from now, I won't be sitting in this chair, someone else will. And I see it in those people. And I think, to me, that's what makes this team so incredible, is that we see people not how they see themselves, but we see them for what they bring to the table. And we see their skills, and we see their caliber, and we see their potential. And I think that's why, that's my biggest moment of pride, is that our team is cool.
It is really cool, and people should join it. Winter tryouts, February 7th, please come. Now, on the more challenging aspect, what's the biggest challenge that you've had to go through when it comes to the team or a conference? Feel free to take a moment to let it sit for a second. I can start playing Jeopardy music if people would like.
I think I can let Josh and Ramsha sit with their thoughts for a bit while I entertain you. I think my biggest challenge with, at least from my portfolio, which is CHIP, is CGAA continues to be, and always has been, a very Model UN focused organization. As I'm sure you've all heard today, we've said the word MUN at least a million times. But CHIP's mandate is bigger than Model UN. It can be more flexible, and it has the potential to do a lot more than just policy. And I think my biggest challenge has been attaining that potential. I know that there's potential, as I'm sure Ramsha does as well. Like, we know that there's so much that can be done, but how do we put that into action? Especially because we're also hosting a very huge conference this semester. The travel team travels almost every weekend to conferences around the continent. And yet it's the same people making these things happen. So members of the Concordia External Delegation are also members of the board. They're also members of ConMun. They're also members of CHIP. So I think the overlap of those roles and a test of people's capacities, their time, their devotion to this club, and also just how to expand, I think, has been my biggest personal challenge. How do I decenter global affairs from MUN and bring it to the actual communities on the ground? Because I know we can. I know we have the potential to do this. And I think every CHIP director before me has had the same issue. And I'm sure that the CHIP directors after me will have this issue. But every year we get one step closer and we take baby steps to achieve this goal.
I'll do it. I'll go ahead. Wow, challenge. I think my biggest challenge was actually, I think it's definitely going to my first conference. I was terrified. I mean, terrified of going because I didn't know what to expect. I mean, in some sense, yes, right? I mean, we get prepared very well in this club. I mean, probably better than any club out there. Yeah. And we practice, but you'll never really know how it's gonna be until you're there, because you have so many different people coming from everywhere on the continent, and they have their own styles and their own types of practice and their own speeches, and you have to find a way to get the chairs to notice you. I was scared, but I was lucky because I had someone else on the team with me in my committee, and she was more experienced, so she helped me in that. I was lucky with that, but you know, getting up, making that first speech, which I was proud of, and trying to figure out how to diplomatically make alliances and write good ideas for an issue that I didn't really know much about before, but I really started caring about once I started the research. It was super challenging. And I'm so glad I got through that, because now it's easier for me to prepare for other conferences. But not only that, it's easier for me to prepare for a meeting with the other security supervisors and our bosses, or for a briefing with all the other security guards, or for tense situations at work, or since I'm part of the Political Science Student Association, talking to politicians, trying to make them come to school. You know, it's helped me kind of not stress so much, not take myself too seriously, and actually trust in my ability to get things done. And that was a challenge that I overcame and I learned from, and I'm really happy I did.
I think for me, something that was very challenging was the ability to persuade people effectively, right? And this comes in because when I communicate in my academic field, it's a very different method of communication. Just a few days ago, I had a research meeting, and one of my professors was like, Ramshad, surgeons don't like words. You know, don't use too many words. Be precise, be to the point. So when you communicate in different fields, there's different ways, right? When you communicate in academia, you talk to people in a different way. When you communicate in MUN, you talk to people in a completely different way. And for me, it was very hard to be able to speak in those different ways. I would talk to people in committee the same way I would talk to someone in my class, right? And when you try and come to a diplomatic solution with a person just based off of facts and just being straightforward, like A, B, C, D, you're not persuading them. You're just stating things, you know? And that's kind of what MUN helped me with. It's that sometimes you need to be able to speak in different ways and to change up your tone and to change up the way you listen and how attentive you are when it comes to communication. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to learn how to communicate in different spaces. You can't just be an effective communicator in academia or an effective communicator in an unmoderated caucus. You need to learn how to be able to use a different voice and approach people in a different way depending on the circumstances. And so that was a huge challenge for me. And it was something that I didn't even know that I struggled with until I started doing MUN. And I was like, oh, this is a problem and I need to solve it. And over the years, it's gotten much better, and I've become much more self-aware of this is how you behave in this setting, and then you switch it off, and then you turn another setting on to go into a different atmosphere and to communicate more effectively and to persuade a different type of audience. So I think that was definitely one of my challenges, and it's thankfully it's something that I've rectified, hopefully.
Hopefully. Now, there are different aspects of MUN. We have General Assembly, which is the more, might I say, serious version? Could I say? The best version. Okay, let's not go too far here. And then we have Crisis as well, the best version, in my humble opinion. And we also have specialized agencies, which are a mix of the both, too. How do you think these different versions of MUN can be useful in someone's career?
I definitely think if you're looking, I really think they help in every kind of career. Crisis definitely helps you with your creativity. And I think that's something companies that if you want to work for them, that's what they look for. I mean, they look for bright ideas, good ideas. And if you're able with the tactics and skills that you've learned from MUN to convey those ideas in a good way, it can be so impactful for your career, and it can just be a rocket fuel for you if you want to rise up the ranks. When it comes to GA, I think diplomacy and compromise, and yeah, that helps a lot in those kind of fields, in corporate environments as well, but also especially, 100% in political environments. Politics is all about compromise, especially in when you make laws, when you're in parliament, it's about debate. Now, obviously, if we get in the technical aspect of it, if you have a majority government, let's say in Canada, debate doesn't really matter because the ruling party is going to do what it wants. But when you have a responsible government who is a minority government who has to be held accountable by other politicians, then comes the real compromise where you need to have long discussions about the goals that you want to achieve as a party and what you want for the people. And GA is definitely one of the best ways to learn about that side of politics that people don't really see. We only see highlights on TikToks of politicians making grandiose speeches about things that are happening. But we don't really see the behind committees where politicians have to actually talk about the difficult subjects that affect our lives, like healthcare, like childcare, like education. And I think GA helps with that. And specialized agency, it helps in both ways with creativity, how to solve an issue as fast as humanly possible and like creatively, and also how to be diplomatic. So yeah.
I will speak more on the GA just because I'm not very experienced on the crisis end of things. But something that GA has taught me that was very interesting to me is that when we do these conferences, right, like the one we're doing now, you prep for days. Sometimes you prep for weeks. You have your solutions, you have your ideas, you have this mental image of your mind. I'm gonna go into a conference, this is what I'm gonna propose, and nobody else is gonna have the same solutions as me, I'm gonna be super unique. And then you go in and you have a grand total of 60 seconds to explain all of the things you've done so far, to talk about what solutions you have to present, to talk about how you can impact the committee. And that was such a learning curve for me, because being able to, after doing such extensive research, pinpoint, this is what I want to say, and this is when I want to say it, because if you guys know, conferences are 4 days long. So you have to really pick when you want to say specific things. That's something that's very useful in terms of GA, and it bleeds into the rest of your academia too. If you ever give a research presentation, your prompts are usually 2 to 3 minutes long, and your paper is maybe like 30 to 40 pages long. So you have to pick and choose what you want to say, how you want to say it. And I think that's something that I would say GA has definitely helped me with, at least.
In my experience, I've primarily done specialized agencies. So I think the biggest thing that specs or specialized agencies help me with is change. I don't handle change very well. And I think in a specialized agency, you walk in and sometimes it can be a GA, sometimes it can be a crisis, sometimes we don't really know what it is. But the point is that you have to adapt and you have to perform depending on what your chair wants, depending on what's needed by committee, depending on the fellow delegates that you're with. You have to form yourself to what is required. You have to deliver based on the needs of what is now. And you don't have time to fall back on your research or take the time and compose yourself. You just have to act. And for someone like me who clutches on to research and prep like it's an anchor, I think specialized agencies really just pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me be more comfortable with thinking on my feet, be more comfortable with taking decisions that I otherwise maybe would not have taken. And I think that also goes to say with crisis. I'm sure, Abby, you will probably attest to this. Your chair may not respond to a certain line of performance that you're giving. Your chair may not respond to some ideas that you're bringing to the table, and you're sitting there and you have to change and you have to pivot because you have a goal to attain, and that is to get that gavel. And I think that the biggest lesson that Model UN teaches me, whether it's GA, whether it's crisis, whether it's a spec or something in between or something weird, is how to adapt to that change and how to rise to the occasion.
All right, one more question before we head into our Q&A period. So please start thinking, everyone watching. What's one piece of advice you would give someone looking to start in Model UN?
I'm gonna channel my inner Shia LaBeouf here. Do it. Just do it. I mean, you might be thinking, it's not for me, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm not a good speaker, I can't debate, I don't know enough about subjects, about the world. No, it's not true. Just do it. Just learn about it. Step out of your comfort zone and try something new. Try to put your ideas forward. Try to learn about the world a little bit and form opinions about it and actually try to strive for solutions. I think a lot of times and especially in politics, I'm a poli-sci major, so I talk a lot about politics, sorry guys, but we tend to let life pass us by. We say that the politicians are doing things that aren't okay, they should be focusing on different things, they should be doing something. But then when it comes to civic engagement or actually doing something ourselves, we shy away from it. And what MUN does is it teaches you how to make policy, like we've talked about earlier. And you can be impressed by yourself and the ideas you can bring to real life problems. But that doesn't stop there, because we're talking about real issues. You can go to your local politician and say, hey, I do this MUN thing on the side, and we were talking about this issue that's actually affecting here. Here's some solution I came up with. Maybe you should talk about it in Parliament. And you'll be surprised how receptive some politicians are to feedback, especially from young people, because we're not engaged enough. But that only happens if you actually go out your way to learn about the world, and MUN is a great way to do that. So honestly, just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice is very similar to Josh's. Just try. I mean, you're not gonna know unless you try. And I know that sitting here, we spent a lot of time talking about authority and responsibility and the complicated aspects of MUN and the chaos and the intensity and the family. But I think at the end of the day, when you're in a committee, it's you, your thoughts, and the research that you've done. It's where you want to go. And you can't go and you can't reach your goals unless you put the work in. And I think Model UN is a great way to develop the skills that you need to put the work in. And it's a stepping stone to a very successful career, as we see with Josh, with Ramsha, and perhaps myself.
Definitely yourself.
I think if there's any advice I would impart, it would be to look for a lesson in everything. when you do an activity like MUN, you win, but you also lose. And you lose constantly, and you make mistakes constantly. And that's the beauty of MUN for me, right? It's like I've been on this team for 2-ish years, and I go to a scrimmage, and still when I come back from a scrimmage and I look at my feedback, keep my chair, I get feedback. This is what you should change. This is what you should improve, right? And it's a testament of how we evolve and how much we evolve, you know? I really like that about MUN. I think that every time you perform, every committee you go into, every scrimmage you do, you learn a lesson about yourself. And when you lose, not even just in MUN, in life, that's how you should look at it, you know? This is a lesson. Having a loss is like, it's one more step towards gaining a win. And when you do MUN, it's important. It's important to take those lessons, retain them, and apply them in your pursuits, not only just in MUN, but the rest of your life as well.
Wonderful. So we'll be heading into our questions and answers period. So if you have any questions, either you're in the audience or joining us online, feel free to lift up your hand and we'll bring over a mic, or type it in the chat and someone will let us know if there are any. So yes?
I see a question right here. Yeah, if you have it, just put it, we'll read it out for you if you have it. Joining us online. Thank you.
Hi, so my name is Safwan. I'm a second-year major in poli-sci, and I am looking to try out, hopefully in 2 weeks. What kind of skills would you say have you developed through your MUN careers? It's like start to now.
I think in terms of the skills that I've developed is, number one, confidence. Prior to when I started Model UN, I would not have been able to hold this conversation with you, look you in the eye, and tell you what I'm thinking, because I would have probably started crying. But I think what Model UN has really taught me is to believe in myself and to know that my voice has power and that it has impact. And I think in terms of also like the soft skills, like learning how to network, making connections with people, forming relationships with people, whether that's professional connections or even personal friendships. Learning how to work under pressure, I think has been also my biggest lesson, learning how to manage different responsibilities, because CGAA is not just one organization, it's 3 organizations in one, and you hold multiple positions across these 3 organizations, learning how to manage that, learning which organization needs how much work, how much time. So I think maintaining that balance and learning how to juggle different aspects of my life and that time management has been my biggest skills that I've learned from Model UN.
First of all, thank you for your question. I think one of the biggest skills I've learned that has helped me is how to market myself. If I look at political campaigns I've been a part of, how to market other people, how to market me, my ideas, it's extremely important. It makes you stand out to other people, because when you go to an interview and you talk to these persons, sometimes they've already spoken to 40 other people who might have more experience than you, more time working, they might be even have worked with that person before. And you need to find a way to make that person want to hire you. And you do that by marketing yourself. And I think that has helped me enormously grow in my life. And I think that's a skill that MUN has definitely helped me develop.
I think for me, it would be the ability to negotiate. I know that sounds kind of funny because it's not necessarily something you learn in MUN, but when I came into MUN, I was very timid, right? It was like if someone told me to do something, I would do it. And over the years, I've kind of gained the ability to go, okay, this is what you want, and this is what I want. We're gonna find a middle ground when it comes to this specific problem, and we're gonna get to a solution working mutually. And that's what, at least that's my definition of negotiation here. And I think it's very important when it comes to a person's self-esteem and when it comes to a person's self-awareness, right? It should never be my way or the highway, or I'll just, let you have the talking stick and I'll let you, continue this forward in whatever way you seem fit. And that's what I think has really helped me with MUN. It's to be able to sit down with a person that I don't necessarily agree with, or that I don't necessarily, have too much in common with, and go, okay, how can we take our conflicting ideas and get to a mutual resolution? And how can we make sure that this benefits not only just me and you, but everybody in the room? So that's a very important skill, I think, I've learned.
Great. Any other questions?
We had a question online. I'm just going to read that out here. It's a question from Rachel, and they're asking just what year of studies could you join MUN, and then also would it might be possible for a mature student, say, that's managing work and studies also to participate?
Okay, so in terms of our team is pretty accessible. It's pretty open to people of different majors and of people that are in different years of their degrees. I know Josh, I, and Rebecca are in almost conflicting years when it comes to our degrees. So really we try and keep an open space for everybody. Could you repeat the second part of the question, please?
They were just asking, I believe, and Rachel, you can just clarify this, but asking, like, if as a mature student, and is that possible for them to participate in terms of managing work and studies? So maybe related to the time commitment or flexibility, I imagine.
That's a great question, Rachel, and that's an important conversation to have as well, because MUN is something that does take up time and that does take up energy. But with that being said, MUN has also forced me as a person to become better at my time management skills. So you really learn how to become a little bit more type A when you have all these responsibilities with you. With that being said, we have people here that are in the workforce, so I think they would be a better testament to the fact that you can, in fact, handle both MUN and work. And yeah, is there anything you would like to add?
I'm actually a mature entry student, so I've joined the team. I work a lot. I mean, if you ask my girlfriend, I work maybe too much, but I do work and I make it work. You don't have to go to every single conference because there are many, and you also have classes and you have exams that you need to fill in. And if you want to have good grades, you have to study. So it's important to manage that well. Of course, time management has been bettered because of that. I didn't have a calendar before I joined MUN. Now I have one. But yeah, it's completely feasible. You can go to one conference, perform, have some fun, learn, travel, and that could be your experience with MUN. And that's totally fine. You might not be able to go to every training, but as long as you go to some trainings, you can go to some scrimmages and actually practice and prepare, you're doing your part. So it's accessible. It is.
And I think just to sort of tie a ribbon on these wonderful answers, the team is very understanding. I think for me, this past year, I've had a lot of ups and downs with my schedule. I haven't been able to travel as much, but I think the number one thing is if you communicate to us what your situation is, we will be more than happy to help you out. As we said, we're a family, and a family cares for one's own. And I think for me, I've been able to fulfill my commitments as a training director for the Model UN team. I'm running a branch. I'm also chairing a committee soon at ConMun. I also am taking classes and I have a job. How do I do this? I honestly don't know. But the point is that it's feasible, and it's feasible because we communicate our situations with one another, and there is a clear line of transparent, healthy, and open communication fostered by Joshua Lewis. And so I think no matter where you are in your life, if you want to start and be a part of this club, you can do so. That being said, we also have medical residents that are part of this team. I don't know how they do it. Some of them are here in the audience today. So yeah, they're the real ones that you should be talking to.
Yeah. Right, any other questions? I think our medical resident might have actually had one.
I think we do have a question right here.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel. My question to you is, what is your the highlight or the achievement that you are the most proud of in your Model UN journey?
Okay. This anecdote relates to one of the people on the panel, actually, and it was it was the closing ceremony of MICMAN last year. And the closing is always such a conundrum of emotions when you're a part of the team. It's like highs and lows, highs and lows. And I believe that was Josh's first conference, eh? That was Josh's first conference, and I was training director the semester before. And when he won, he came up to me and our other training director. Guys, I just won an award. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. I'm like, he was elated. And for me, that was my biggest takeaway from MICMAN. It was like, damn, like Josh feels so happy right now, and like we contributed to this level of happiness, and we contributed to the fact that he feels good about himself. And I think that's the thing, right? It's such a rewarding experience when not only you win, but you see people in your team winning. It's like, damn, like we really did this. So that's it for me.
I think for me, I mean, I touched up on this in my other answers, but I think it was probably at the gala last year. And it was so funny because we give out like internal team awards that, to be honest, don't really mean much, but it's more like a hey, we're gonna recognize you. And I remember I don't know if it was Ramsha who announced that no, it wasn't. It was Brian, sorry. But who announced that this year's GA rookie was me. And I thought that was very funny because I thought that I did horribly the year previous. So again, it's the fact that the team sees something in me that even I don't see in myself. And I think that was a moment that I was proud that I was part of this team, that I was part of this family. And yeah, it's not a very big moment, but to me, it's really big.
Ramsha already talked about my proud moment, but I'll say it anyways. I mean, I was so happy winning that award. I mean, it was something else. I worked so hard for that conference, and like, I didn't think I was gonna win anything. And when I did, it's like I worked, like the work wasn't for nothing, and I tried my best. I was second guessing, am I even gonna get something? Like, and then you just wait, they're like naming the committee, and you're like, oh my God, your heart's beating. You're like, are they gonna name my name? And when they did, like, I was so happy, and I went up there and I got my certificate, and it was really nice. So yeah, I was so happy. Yeah, that's a very proud moment.
So sweet. Any other questions?
I'm not seeing any other questions online. Anyone in the space? Yeah. Oh, we've got one over here.
Out of all the transferable skills that we've discussed today, if you can only pick 3 for the next 3 years, what would you predict your next 3 years like the most utilized or the most useful would be?
I would say off the bat, networking, and networking. Because I didn't realize until I got into MUN just how important it is to network, right? And I say this as an international student. When you move to a country where you don't know anyone, you're forced to put yourself in social situations where you have to propel yourself, you have to carry yourself forward. And if I didn't do MUN previously, my networking skills would not have been as strong. And a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors that have opened for me because of the fact that I was able to network. And it's such an underrated skill because we only assign it to certain professions and to certain fields, but you really need to be able to network if you want to make a career for yourself, and if you want to, anything you want to do, if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become an engineer, if you want to become a politician, you need to learn how to network. And that's one of the strongest skills that MUN teaches you. And yeah, I'm not letting go of that anytime soon.
I think I would say branding but this isn't necessarily like a soft skill, but we say colloquially that Mun kids can talk in circles and we can talk for hours and hours and hours. And I think knowing how to talk and how to hold a conversation, especially when you're networking, is a skill that I learned from Model UN. And it's a skill that can take you places. Because learning how to brand yourself, how to market your skills, how to market yourself is the only thing that is going to separate you from the tens and hundreds of John Does that have the exact same education, exact same skills, and exact same contacts as you. The one thing that separates you from all of these people is your ability to stick up for yourself and present yourself as the candidate for the position. So I think, and that's a skill that's taken me quite far in my career. And I think that's the biggest thing that anyone doing Model UN can gain out of this.
I think for me, the skill that I think I'm going to use until I'm dead, honestly, is just being able to listen. I think the fact, like, I've worked on my empathy a lot, especially in my role as internal director, you know, trying to like see other people's perspective and make people understand other people's perspective and experiences. It really helps me in my job right now, and the ultimate goal is to become a lawyer, and it'll help me in being a lawyer, you know, understanding situations. And I really think that's gonna help me, because when you think of a leader, yes, sometimes you think someone that's like strong opinions, gung-ho, just they make people listen to them, whether they like it or not. But then when I think of a leader, I think of someone who's able to listen to their population and actually voice their opinions in a way that's representative and that makes them feel proud that they can follow this person. And I always aspire to at least be a little bit of that, you know? I'm probably not gonna be that fully in my life, and I will strive to be that, but I wanna be able to understand people, be nice to people, make people smile at least. And in the field of work I'm doing now, it's so helpful to like diffuse situations that can end so badly. But just by being nice and understanding and to listen to people, you can make so much impact. And I think that's something I will always have with me, regardless of what kind of job I end up in, if I become a lawyer, if I continue with security, whatever I'm gonna do in my life, I know that the empathy and the listening that I've gained from this is gonna help me anywhere.
Well, Josh, if you ever go into politics, you do have my vote. Awesome. All right, are there any other questions? If not, have a few more, but feel free to lift your hand up at any point. Join the conversation. So what do you believe actual members of parliament, actual members of the United Nations, NATO could learn from the delegates competing on the circuit in these hypothetical versions of these organizations?
I think a lot. I think when we approach solutions, everybody approaches solutions in a very different way. And something that I really like about the way we approach solutions is we welcome the fact that someone who doesn't necessarily seem to have expertise in a specific field can still contribute to said solution. You know, we live in a world where we don't just have economic problems or social problems or political problems. We have problems that have an economic aspect to it, and a social aspect to it, and a political aspect to it. So when we try to find solutions, it needs to be multifaceted, right? We need to find approaches through different lenses. And I think that's something Mun kids do really well, right? We pick our niche and we run with it, right? Like, this is a problem about, maybe it's a finance problem. Someone's gonna come into it with a healthcare aspect. Another person's gonna come into it with a humanitarian aspect. And that's important. That's very important, because a problem affects everybody. It affects people from different parts of lives. It affects people who belong to different spheres in life. And you never know how someone else's input can impact a solution. So I think that cross collaboration between different sectors is something that I really appreciate about MUN. And I'm hoping that it's something that we can see emulated in a lot of the problems that are going on right now.
I think maybe this might not touch up on your question right on the nose, Abby, but I think especially from an academic perspective, a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves in existing narratives. We pigeonhole ourselves in research, and we hide our noses in books, and we fail to look up, and we fail to look at the space around us. And I think that's something that Model UN kids do very well, especially in a section of the rules of procedure called Q&A, where delegates are forced to look at a certain set of solutions and poke holes in them, forced to look at a solution and say, actually, this doesn't work at all in practice. Your solution doesn't really do anything. And it's rough, and it's a critique. It's a critique on the days of research that you've put into this conference. It's a critique on your performance over 2 to 3 days, but it's necessary. It's necessary because we need to improve. We need to make strides. And I think that skill of looking at your own work, being able to critique your own work, being able to assess the practicality of a certain law, a solution, or a policy is something that I think a lot of activists do very well. But I think, as Ramsha said, more collaboration, which is something that Model UN kids do, is always, always welcome and should be a core pillar, especially when it comes to intergovernmental organizations.
I'm so happy you talked about parliamentary because I have so many opinions about it, especially in the day and age we live now. When you asked that question, I automatically thought about what recently happened at the World Economic Forum with Mark Carney's speech. And I think that's something that Model UN does better, is that we delegates actually voice their opinions, voice the solution that they really believe can work, and they draw lines as to where things need to not encroach on. They draw their boundaries well. And I think that's what we lack. When Mark Carney talked about this rules-based order being a sham, it's essentially calling out organizations like the United Nations for their ineffectiveness at amending situations like the one we're seeing now. And to me, seeing MUN and how we are unapologetic about the solutions we believe are important, that's something that I think the international community needs to be more apt of. I know there's this game of diplomacy and power structures where some countries might have more leverage on others, and that's what Mark Carney was talking about, and that we need to stop feeding into those leverages. And I think that's what maybe international organizations need to understand, is that we have agency. We have to do stuff. We have to do something. We have to draw our boundaries. When things are not okay, we need to be able to say, this is not okay. We will not stand for this, and our actions are going to speak for themselves. And I think MUN is kind of like to me, what the United Nations should be. It should actually be about cooperation and actually poking holes into ideas of other people, and it actually involving fruit. And we're doing that through CHIP, actually doing things in our community. And I think international organizations need to realize that they need to draw their boundaries better and actually defend the ideas that they say they uphold.
I agree. Now, when it comes to our team, we do travel a lot. We go to different provinces, we go to different countries. How has it helped expand your cultural worldview?
Whenever I travel, I'm usually a plane person. Road trips are not my forte, but with CED, I know my way around a car now. I know what it's like to sit in a car for many hours, drive through rural America, and I think it also builds a lot of character. You're not staying in a 5-star hotel. You're not having a breakfast buffet in the morning. Usually you wake up and it's go, go, go. You're prepping for a conference. Okay, this is how we're prepping. This is who you're prepping with. This is what you've prepped. So I think it really builds your caliber, and it makes you a much more patient person. I have managed my time better, and I've also respected other people's time better, and I've become a more patient person in my travels with CED. And it's just opened me up to people from different parts of the world. And it's also opened me up to see similarities with people. Ramsha and I, we grew up in very similar worlds, but I didn't know of her existence until I came here and until I joined this team and I got to know her. And despite us growing up in similar circumstances, we found common ground here in a country where we know no one, in this team with this weird cult-like game. And we find community, we find friendships, we find professional skills, and I think that is the true reward of being a part of this team.
I think when it comes to cultural accommodations, we do have a bit of a step up because we live in such a multicultural city. You know, we live in Montreal and there's so many different people from so many different places. But I think when it comes to MUN, it adds a different aspect to it. And a little anecdote, when I did McMUN 2 years ago, we had obviously delegates from all different countries, and we had a delegate of Ukraine. And I got to know her. She was from a different university in Canada. And we had a very frank conversation. And she sat down and she told me, this means a lot to me because I'm Ukrainian. This is a very important assignment to me. It's, you know, this is something that I carry with a lot of pride. And regardless of whether I win or I lose, I'm so happy to have represented this country because it is my country. And that's very heartwarming to see, you know, to see people have a chance to talk about issues that are personal to them and to talk about issues that mean a lot to them is, I think, one of the merits of MUN. And I think it really opens your door in terms of the cultural understanding. And obviously you come to realize that there's so much that we have in common than we think we do, you know. I've had conversations with people from different parts of the world for hours on end talking about the most mundane things. And you come to realize that even though these people grew up in a completely different part of the world, we like the same things. We eat the same food, we enjoy the same flavors. And yeah, it's a very cool experience.
I love road trips. I'm a big road trip fan. I think it really opened my eyes to how big the world is. Like we said multiple times, we meet so many different people. I mean, you meet people from different universities who themselves are from different countries. And finding common ground with them, going to talk about, like, I mean, last year on McMUN, you know, we're lucky because we're from Montreal, so we know the place around, but you have people from different parts of the world who don't know anything. And just the joy of like sharing what Montreal is to people who don't know what it is, like showing to them what the Bell Center is, or showing to them what Old Port is like, or showing to them the potholes. And, you know, it's just amazing. You know, it's just so fun to be able to share culture. And then you go to another city and then it's their turn to show you what they have there. You know, went to Toronto, they show us the TTC and how much they hate it. And, you know, it's such a great thing. You just open your eyes to the world and it makes you want to explore it even more, you know, and it's so fun. You just learn so much about the world through your committee and through your research, but also through the other people in your committee and their research and their experiences. So it's awesome, yeah.
I love it. True Montreal culture, endless construction.
Yeah, exactly.
So any questions from the audience or online? If not, I have another one. I'm endlessly filled with questions, learning so much through this. You're all in positions of authority within the team. And you've mentioned a bit what it's like juggling friendship with this kind of authority status. Could you tell us a bit more about the techniques and strategies you use while doing this and how they might translate into academics or your career?
I think it's an interesting mix because we compete and we have these structures of executive teams and of executive structures, but at the same time, you're sharing a room with these people for 3 days on end. You know, you're bound to have some sort of social connection with these people and have and foster a relationship with them. And so for me, it's always been compartmentalizing. You know, you have to be able to compartmentalize your private relationships with your professional relationships. It's it's great. Being in a social activity is great because you get to form a social circle by yourself. But when that goes into a professional aspect, keeping in mind that, okay, right now, he or she, or they or them, is my colleague, right? Maybe once we're out of this executive meeting, we can go and grab a cup of coffee. But it's always that compartmentalization. And for me, I like to physically compartmentalize as well. This is something I always tell my team, like, if you want to text me as a friend, I message. If you want to text me as a colleague, messenger. Like, it's very important for me to physically sometimes be able to have that distinction between I'm in a more professional setting now and I'm in a more personal setting now. So that's the way I like to go about it.
Yeah, I think I agree with Ramsha in terms of like separating like your communication platforms. But something that I also do is my tone is something that I always am very cognizant about. If I'm speaking to you as your friend Rebecca and we're talking about, I don't know, the cool cafe you went to a couple of weeks ago, my tone and my inflection of voice, the words that I use, the language that I use is very different to, okay, I'm in a board meeting, I'm representing an entire portfolio at this team, and I have results to show. And I'm talking about what my portfolio has done, what we've collected in terms of donations, who we're partnering with, what charities we're partnering with. And I think when you yourself are cognizant of the seriousness of a particular meeting or a situation, the people that you're on the table with will match you at that level. And I find that that's something that the members and the execs that I work with do very well, is when we walk into a meeting, we know what the meeting is for, and we strive to achieve the goals of that meeting. And I think that that structure really helps all of us as we fulfill our roles.
I mean, I've dealt with this a lot. I mean, especially at work, you know, because I'm pretty young for my age, being in a position of authority. And sometimes it can be extremely difficult to kind of like lay down the law with people that you're either friends with, that you were former colleagues with on the same level, and now you're they have to answer to you, and people who have more experience than you. It's difficult to navigate, and sometimes you second guess yourself, like, should I be doing this? Should I be telling this like that? Am I being too harsh? Am I being too second guessing yourself a lot? And one way, and I keep coming back to this word, but it's so important and it's helped me so much, is like just understanding empathy, like just being empathetic. If I put myself in someone else's shoes, I can understand more a way to phrase myself and phrase the ways I'm saying, the things I'm saying, that won't be taken out in a wrong way, or that won't be problematic. At work, I work with a lot of people who have years of experience over me, and I find a way to work with them and have them listen to me because I play into that. They have experience. That's not a weakness of mine. That's a strength. I can ask them questions. It's okay for me to ask them questions, and they'll appreciate it because they'll know I recognize that they have experience and that their opinions matter. And it's the same thing with MUN. When I talk to my friends in MUN and I have to talk to them about serious issues, I let them speak to me about what they think. If there's something equitable that has happened or unequitable that has happened, I don't go pointing fingers. I listen and I try to understand, okay, where did this come from? And then I take an action. Okay, I heard you, but this is how this is interpreted. This is what you need to do to be better. And I think, honestly, empathy is something that I think we neglect in this society, and that helps so much. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to your careers, what is your end goal with it, and how can MUN help you achieve this? I know I'm trying to get you guys to expose what your dreams are, but I'm sure everyone would appreciate it.
I don't know what my end goal is yet, and I think I've always had ever since I was younger, I've always had this philosophy of, I'm gonna go where the road takes me. And right now the road's very foggy, but I'm still going on it. And I think Model UN has always been the fuel, I think, in my journey. It's always been something that I've put a lot of effort into because I know I'm also extracting a lot of reward from it. I know that Model UN, as Ramsha mentioned, it builds the skills that you need to network. It builds the skills that you need to brand yourself. It builds your empathy. It builds your listening skills. And these are tools that can help you irrespective of where you want your career to end up. You need to be a good listener if you want to be a doctor and if you want to have good bedside manner. You need to be a good listener if you are working with communities on the ground, if you're working with families, if you're campaigning and you want to work with your constituents. You need to be able to stick up for yourself when you're in a meeting and maybe you're in a space with toxic work culture. You need to be able to identify these things, remove yourself from situations, or make them better. And I think Model UN gives you the tools to do what you need to do, irrespective of what field you're in, whether that's finance, big law, or even a community school teacher. So I think anyone, irrespective of what field you're in, can gain something from a skill like Model UN.
I think for me, the end goal has, for quite a few years now, been medicine. And medicine is one of those fields where you have to map it out from the start. You can't wake up one day and go, I want to be a doctor tomorrow. You know, it takes a lot of planning, right? And for a lot of careers, it takes a lot of planning. And you sit down one day and you open Google Sheets and you map out everything, right? This is the year I'm going to graduate. This is the year I'm going to apply. This is when I'm going to give my entrance exams, yada, yada, yada. And then life happens. You know, things happen, things cause delays, things derail you sometimes from specific goals. And you come to realize that you have to pivot. And that's something that Model UN teaches you how to do. You learn how to pivot. A lot of the times when you step into committee, you have these set ideas and these set goals, and you walk in and you're like, well, maybe this isn't the best fit for what the committee wants right now. So you learn how to accept that maybe this isn't the best course right now and to pivot. And that, I think, is very important when you talk about a career, right? Because a career is a lot. It's your entire life that you're planning out. And you can sit down and have this image of, this is what I'm going to do by the time I'm 30. This is what I'm going to do by the time I'm 40. But you have to be mentally prepared to pivot and be able to understand that maybe this isn't what I need right now, and this is how I go about it. This is an alternative. And that's important. And that's a very important skill, regardless of whichever career you're choosing. You have to be able to learn how to pivot. And yeah, I think that's a pretty important skill, regardless of whichever career you're choosing.
So I stated this before a little bit earlier, but I since a young age, I mean, watching Suits, if you know that show, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I believe that it's one of the best ways to actually help the most vulnerable among us. And I've always believed in social justice, helping people, and it's something I've always wanted to do. I don't know, it's just, it's a goal that I'm working towards every day. And like you said, you know, you never really know what's gonna happen in your life. You know, I enjoy my job so much right now. You know, I love my job and it's amazing. And there is a legal aspect to it. And I do believe that entertainment, because, you know, event security, entertainment is important in our society, because when things look so dark and things aren't fun, and trust me, nowadays, in the news, if you follow the news, it's not always bright. I don't even think it's bright at all. But entertainment is something that really helps people. I mean, when you go to shows and you see people cry and laugh and take pictures, memories that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives, I really fell in love with that. I mean, it's amazing. And there is a legal aspect to the company I work for. And I've been thinking about maybe doing that, you know, making it possible so that events can come to Montreal and people can have some fun and enjoy life for what it is, you know, and build connections with people and actually have a good time. But there's also a part of me that wants to actually do the work of, you know, defending people who've been disenfranchised, and maybe in international law or in criminal court. It's something. So I'm at a crossroads right now. But law is definitely something I want to do.
Well, you mentioned Montreal. We do live in quite an electric, amazing city. And one of my highlights of the year when it comes to MUN is ConMUN. Why do you think it's important that we have this conference and that we invite delegates from all over North America to come to Montreal and participate in our conference?
I think for starters, for us as a competitive Model UN team, it is very important to know what you're competing for, to know what is your chair looking for, what do I see when I look out in the crowd. You don't walk into a conference just to get a gavel. You walk into a conference to be able to adapt to a situation, but you can't adapt if you don't know what the situation is. And by participating in ConMUN, we are the ones sitting in the executive board. We are the ones running a committee, running the show, calling the shots. And we are the ones that are able to craft the situation, whether that's in a specialized agency, whether that's in a GA, you're the one that you are the person that chooses how your committees run. You choose the topics that are being talked about. And this is also just a very good way to highlight issues that you personally feel motivated by. Every single year at ConMUN, when we choose committees, it is always at the discretion of our USGs and members of our team. We have committees on pediatrics. We have committees on propaganda. We have committees on mining operations and extractive industries. These are issues that members of our team have flagged and have said, I want to talk about this. I want to bring awareness to this. I want 50 to 100 people from across this continent to come to my city and talk about this issue because I feel it's important. And I think that to me is the biggest benefit of participating in ConMUN. It's what gets me to come back every year because I know that this is the place where I get to craft what policies and ideas are being brought forward. And I think that sense of agency is something that I don't get anywhere else.
I think ConMUN is a really interesting conference. Every year we come up with different committee slates and with unique ideas. And something I really appreciate about ConMUN and conferences in general is you realize just how multifaceted problems are. You know, let's take the health crisis, right? The global pediatric crisis. A lot of the times there's a misconception that it is just a pediatric crisis. It's not, right? When we allow delegates from all over the world to look at this from a more outward perspective, you come to realize that, okay, well, this exists. Why does this happen? Is it because of funding? Why is there a lack of funding? Is it because there isn't enough data? Why isn't there enough data? Is it because of misrepresentation? Why is there no misrepresentation? Is it because maybe there's legal institutions that haven't accounted for certain communities, right? So you come to realize that this one issue isn't just about a specific field, right? It impacts all of us. The pediatric crisis doesn't look at the social background of a child, right? It impacts everybody. And we talk about things like global health, we talk about things like herd immunity. They don't look at borders. It's very important for us to approach issues with a cohesive lens. And I think that's something that ConMUN does particularly well. It chooses topics that we're able to bring in inputs from different specialties, from different fields. And so everybody has a seat at the table, and everybody understands how this issue that might not seem that relatable to them is impacting them, and how people from different fields can come together and work towards it. So I think that's a very important reason to attend ConMUN, regardless of whether you're a political science student or not. There are issues out there that are affecting you, and you have a say in framing solutions to these issues.
If you're interested, we do want staffers if you want to join ConMUN. All right, well, do we have any favorite memories from the conferences of years past? I hope there's at least one good memory from a past ConMUN.
So last ConMUN, I was in a F1 committee. So it was a crisis committee. And you were on there too, Abby. it was a lot of fun, especially because our back room, so the people who actually run the story and like break the news to the delegates who have to deal with, bringing the Grand Prix and making it happen in Montreal. They're big F1 fans and they know everything about it. And then there's me who just doesn't know anything. And it was just so fun because the delegates brought so much energy and like so much creativity. And then it was just so many stories and references. And it made me watch like a couple episodes of like Drive to Survive, so it was kind of cool. And it just shows you like Conmon is so fun. I mean, you have so many different options for if you want more creativity, more fun, more lightheartedness, go to a crisis committee. If you want to talk about the hardcore issues that really matter to you, excuse me, go to a GA committee. I mean, there's so much for you. And then on top of that, it's downtown Montreal, Place des Arts, one of the most beautiful places in Montreal. One of the best months. Festivals are starting up. You can learn about the culture of the city. I mean, it's amazing. So I really recommend it. If you want a staff, I mean, you're gonna be working with us. You're gonna have so much fun.
And we're fun guys.
Oh
trust.
yeah, oh yeah. And the committees are super fun. I think we have like a maple syrup heist committee or something along those lines. WHO. We have. I mean, it's amazing. Just come along. It's gonna be awesome.
I think one of my favorite memories from last year's Con1 was probably my committee. Every 2 minutes, delegates would raise the issue of accountability and would end up talking in circles. And I think that's something that happens in a lot of GAs. But it's so funny because at one point, I think I had enough of it. And I quite frankly told my committee, maybe we should move away from accountability. And everyone heaved a collective sigh of relief. So I think it just goes to show that you can be thinking about something internally and the people next to you might also agree with you. They're just waiting for someone to say it out loud. But it was a little funny tidbit, and I think everyone just enjoyed that, despite the competition, irrespective of the stress and chaos of a committee, at the end of the day, we all agreed on one thing, and that is that we shouldn't be talking in circles.
Yeah, I think Conmon's always such a fun experience, and it's always so unique every year. And last year, when I chaired Conmon, me and my USG Emmanuel, we came to a topic which was about gene editing, human gene editing, and how it impacts the world, basically. And the first and second day of committee session, you had all of these delegates who looked really petrified just looking at the word gene editing because they were like, oh, big sciencey word, I don't know what this means. And at some points in the committee, I stopped committee for a second and I just sat down and I told them what gene editing was. Like, this is what it is. This is what it does. This is how it works. And I tried to explain it to them in like really simple terms of like, okay, so this is CRISPR, and this is what happens when you have a mutilation, and this is how to, and you can see, it was like a classroom. You could see them like in real time. It was like light bulbs, like, oh, this is what we're talking about, and this is why it's important to all of us. So I always like those like little committee sessions of like, this is what the topic is about, and this is why it impacts all of us. So that was a lot of fun for me.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for the incredible stories and thoughts that you've all shared. I know everyone here, whether they be in the audience or coming in online, have learned a lot about what it is to be a part of this team, as well as how it might affect their future careers. So if you all have any closing remarks you'd like to share.
I think just one final sort of remark. For those of you that are interested in getting involved with our team and CGAA as a whole, one of the most common ways to do that is by trying out for our Model UN team. We have a prep session on February the 5th, I believe, which is where we give you all the resources that you need to prep for our tryout, which will be on February 7th. Yours truly will also be at said tryout. And yeah, that's one of the most common ways that people get involved with us. And then from there, you will have the opportunity to participate in Conmon, to run a conference, and maybe even get more involved with CHIP and the humanitarian work that we do. Any other comments?
I'd like to say that it's been really fun being here. I had a good time. It's really awesome, and I hope that everybody who was listening was there. I thank you for being there, first of all. And thank you for listening to us. I really hope that this give you the even if you don't want to join MUN, that just try something new. Try to speak, try to go do something, because your voice matters, what you say matters. Maybe you don't realize it yet, but it does. And if more people speak, more people bring in their ideas in our world, it can bring a lot of stuff. But if you do want to do MUN, come to the tryout.
I think they basically encapsulated everything that I was wanting to say. But the tryouts are on the 7th of Feb. You should definitely check out our Instagram to get more updates on the tryout. ConMun runs in March. If you're interested in learning how Model UN works from a completely different perspective, I strongly urge you to be a part of ConMun, one of our USGs. Avi's right here. And yeah, come try it out. I know it seems intimidating. I know it seems like a lot, but in the words of a very wise man, Anthony Bourdain, you will never know until you truly find out. So come find out and see us at the tryout.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you also for the people joining us and your questions online. We're going to be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now, but this does remain available on our YouTube channel, and you can revisit it, and you can share it. And we definitely want to find a way to get the Model UN back into fourth space somehow. We can talk later. Anyway, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.